Okay, so I have the honor to moderate the next session, which is the opportunities and challenges of entering the US market, iGaming market trends, and global expansion. And I have a great panelist with me who I'd like to invite on stage. Victoria Soltes, founder at PSP Angels. You can have a seat here. All right. We also have Claire Osborne, Vice President of Interactive. You can have a seat here. And we also have the unique William J. Pascrell, the third partner at Princeton. Yeah, here, yeah. Princeton Public Affairs Group. It's nice to have you here. He flew in from the US. There are a couple of other people flying in from the US. All right, so before we start the panel, I would like to congratulate the team that got up early this morning. So, yeah, and we have somebody in the crowd who went out too early and did not find us. So, congrats to everyone. Okay, so I will ask my panelists to just give a short introduction about themselves so people get to know them. So let's start with Victoria here.
Sure, thank you so much. So my name is Victoria Scholtes, and I'm the founder of PSP Angels. We are a payment consultancy, independent payment consultancy company, which makes you understand how banks think and why your application gets rejected, who are the safest and more reliable, cheapest even, banking providers who still have the willingness to accept you in the high-risk industry. We're dealing a lot with the challenging cases, including gambling, gaming, forex investment, crypto exchanges, adult entertainment. So basically, whoever gets rejected by the banks, we can assist them and we advise them on how to plan the payments and how to find cheaper and safer payment providers.
Thank you so much. Claire.
Hi, I'm Claire Osborne, VP of Interactive at Inspired. I'm glad you're taking the pictures down because I've made the cardinal sin of wearing exactly the same outfit as on my photo. So it looks like it's only taken today. But yeah, so Inspired are, for anyone who doesn't know, we're a content development company building casino content across multiple verticals, retail and online. And we're in we've got about 50,000 terminals on the retail side across 35 markets, kind of worldwide. I head up the interactive part of the business, so I look at anything online casino-based worldwide.
Thank you so much. Bill.
Thank you, Zoltan. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming this morning, Zoltan. Thank you, as always, for a tremendous event.
It's our pleasure.
For your hospitality and for your invitation. Claire and Victoria, it's an honor to be on this panel with you. My name is Bill Pascrell III. I'm a partner in Princeton Public Affairs Group, affectionately known as like a Star Wars character, BP3. So, why am I here? First of all, Zoltan invited me years ago, and I came a couple of times to Budapest, found it remarkable, have been able to share my experiences. So I think what's important this morning, rather than get into my whole background, which I'll give a snippet of, is to tell you that I'm also here to learn, and I'm also here to help you learn. My firm is the largest state contract lobbying public affairs firm in the United States, founded 37 years ago by my partner, Dale Florio. I brought the gaming space to the firm in the early 90s, and I won't get into the story, but my first client in the gaming space, and I'm a Democrat, a Biden Democrat, was Donald Trump and his 3 casinos. And maybe on the afternoon panel, George, you'll permit me to share that story because it's quite interesting. I did 3 things which I'm humble but particularly proud of. European gaming has been in existence for decades, particularly online. America's way behind in the times. We're dodgy, we're growing, it's a nascent industry. I was hired by an organization called IMEGA, the Interactive Media Entertainment Gaming Association, which was made up of 37 offshore illegal black market books. I had to get an opinion from the Attorney General to take that client on and receive resources from a black market association. Why was I able to do that? Because they wanted me to do three things. Most people in the industry, particularly in Europe, who have great more experience than I do, don't often know this story. I was hired to bring exchange wagering to the United States. We did it within 9 months. It failed miserably because of the European experience of not understanding that you have to put capital into marketing to educate the unsophisticated American punter. 2, I was hired to bring online gaming to the United States. Did it in 2 years, and we launched 9 months later in November 2013 in New Jersey, and have been involved in the 6 other states. Nevada only has poker online, as you know, which is kind of weird, but the other 5 states that have online. Then I was involved at the same time, coterminously, with the 10-year battle to repeal PASPA and bring sports betting throughout the country outside of Nevada. That, I believe, are credentials that help me to better educate the industry in America. Europe has so much over America in terms of the experience. Zoltan, thank you for the opportunity. I'm really looking forward to engaging with you, Victoria, and Claire. Thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor to have you here. See, that's an introduction.
I'm a fan. I'll pay you later.
Yeah. Yeah, all right. So yeah, and Bill has been also regular on our virtual meetups that we do about Gaming America, on Gaming Americas about North America every 3 months. So you can also catch him there every 3 months. And yeah, let's dive into the questions then. So let's start with the payment industry now, because that's also the backbone of the industry. So now, Victoria, could you tell us how payment providers think? You maybe have some insights on that, because you do work with them.
Yes, and it's interesting actually to hear all the colleagues talking about the regulation and obviously the problems of the regulation. We've got a lot of colleagues who's got background in law and talking to the regulator, which is all great, but we have to understand that banks think differently than regulators. So many times we have clients who are going to lawyers, and lawyers advise you what is legal and what is not. Incorporate an offshore company, there is no regulation or looser regulation, so you are safe, you're legal. Now the problem starts that when you go to banks, and banks say that yes, you might be legal, but unfortunately I cannot take you because my own internal compliance does not really like what you have. And we many times see that something which could be completely legal is getting rejected by payment providers. So you might actually spare some money on the whatever taxation, on the regulation, on the submission, or in any other way finding the easier, let's say offshore regulation many times. But you might actually spend more on the risk and the banking costs when you face all those banking providers who still take you against all odds. So what we need to understand that banks think differently than the regulator. And the other thing is that banks many times, or payment providers or payment institutions, they have their own risk and own compliance within, which could be completely different from other financial institutions' own compliance. So many times we see that you apply to one provider and you get rejected, and the other one takes you. Why? Many times it's completely subjective reasons, because their compliance lady used to work with gaming, so they know the industry, now they are opening for gaming. The other one has experience in crypto, and that's why we take crypto, but when she's on a holiday, we cannot evaluate crypto companies, for example. So this could be absolutely ridiculous reasons. Many times that banks have a certain type of portfolio where they are balancing out the risk. So if you have a lot of low-risk clients, shoe shops, supermarkets, then the compliance tells you that now, guys, that's great, let's earn some money. Now we have a solid base of low risk, add some high risk, add some more casinos, add some more whatever Forex companies or crypto companies or even adult. But once it fills up, or they are losing one good, let's say, supermarket chain, immediately the portfolio needs to be balanced up. And that's why they say that, okay, guys, from tomorrow, we are not taking any new casinos. Why? Because I said so. Many times the price is very subjective. How much is my fee? Give them 3%. Why? Because I said so. So there are a lot of subjective things, a lot of risk assessment, which cannot be really explained. I really still see that in the payment industry, it's still who knows who. I can push it under the table. Don't worry, I know him. I work with him for many years. I can put you through, which has nothing to do with the regulation or the legal environment many times of the applicant. So yes, replying to your question, payment providers do things differently than the regulator, and many times it's just good luck or a good advisor who will be able to guide you on this way.
Wow, that's a scary thought. Bill, anything to add to this?
Wow. No, I totally agree. I like to share with lived experiences, so permit me to do that. I hope you'll allow me to do that. In October of 2013, 60 days before we launched online gaming in New Jersey, and this just shows you how ancient the American market is. It's just so steeped in the past. Director Reebok, who's the head of the New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement, which is, and I say this with pride, but also with credibility, the toughest regulatory regime in the world. If you can get a license in New Jersey, you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. You can get a license anywhere else. They're tough. At G2E, you've been to it, Zoltan, and perhaps you ladies have as well. It's the second largest event in the industry outside of ICE, I believe. I was with Dave Reebok on a panel talking about New Jersey's launch, and I said, Director, in between questions, like I'd lean over to Claire, I said, Director, have you thought anything, I know we're 60 days away from launch, about payment processing? He goes, what do you mean? I said, did you talk to the New Jersey Division of Banking and Insurance? What do you mean? They hadn't even thought about payment processing. It wasn't even on the, so, and I'm not saying I'm the smartest guy in the world. I'm just saying how, you know, we're growing as an industry in America. We have so much to learn from the European model, both the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why I am here, to share sort of my lived experience, but to also say, you know, Victoria, I represent 12 payment processing companies from throughout the globe. From Fiserv to PaySafe to Optimal, you know, all the usual suspects, and then some of the more dodgy suspects that are trying to be legitimized. But if you think regulation's tough in the gaming industry, get into the payment processing industry.
I agree.
Highly regulated, massive risk, and very important because what banks are trying to do is keep their license and make sure they're helping the regulators with AML issues. So I love the fact that this is a part of this conversation. The first 2 years of online gaming in New Jersey, no American Express, no Discover, just MasterCard and Visa. 80% of all players who came in to try to open their account were rejected.
Exactly.
That's changed drastically. Why? Because the payment processors, ACH providers, the credit card companies, and the regulators sat down and started to work a little bit more. And I always say this, as a lawyer and a public affairs counsel, my job and responsibility, and your job as the industry, is to educate before you advocate. That's the way we move the dial forward.
Oh, nice.
I completely agree. And if I can touch on one more thing, Malta. Malta is basically living out of gambling, right? The iGaming industry. And the banks pulled the plug and they said that, okay, guys, from now on, we are not onboarding anything which has to do with gambling. Even software companies who are providing software for gambling. And then everybody was there that what's the whole point of the Maltese license if you cannot get local banks? So it's very hard to actually merge the regulation with the banking in a way that us like operators can actually navigate in this complete maze.
If you want to look up payment providers, all you have to do is go on LinkedIn. Because you get approached by 600 every day.
Yes, but can you trust them?
Yeah.
Like, would you? put your money
No.
in someone who reaches out to you in LinkedIn and tells you that, don't worry, bro.
It's like the first time you accept that connection, then the message pops up. Hey, I'm a
Exactly.
payment provider.
Open a bank account
Claire?
with me.
Not a huge amount to add there. Just to say, I agree with the arbitrary nature of it. I mean, we're a well-established UK land-based business. We've been in operation many years, certainly more than I've been in the industry for, which is getting on a while now. And even a few years ago, our bank decided they weren't taking our business anymore. And we're a supplier. We have, there is risk. Obviously, it's the gambling industry, but as a supplier, we're a lot lower risk than an operator or anyone else, involved in the industry. And I won't name banks, but it was a big big UK institution suddenly decided they weren't taking our business anymore, and we had 60 days to scramble around and find a new bank.
Wow. Do they get penalized or something like that before accepting high-risk clients? Or?
Exactly,
All
and
right.
that's the thing, because Visa and MasterCard can give you really hefty penalties, and it's not about what you do wrong as a payment institutions, because obviously everybody's doing the basic bare minimum, the AML, the KYC, the are you doing good transactions, but if there is one transaction which is illegal or fraudulent or something goes through the system, they get so high penalties, sometimes up to $250,000 or $500,000 as a payment institution. So of course your risk guy is going to tell you that how much is this guy going to put us in our pocket? I don't know, low volume or something. Better reject. Don't rock the boat. We already have a payment institution which is going, which is creating profit. Don't add more because we don't know them. I don't know them. I don't trust them. Better reject and concentrate on what we already have, so new players don't even have a chance to enter. So if you're a startup, forget it. You have to deal with shaky providers until you build up your volume, until you build up your client base to prove yourself that you're good enough for a payment institution. And even then, the payment institution thinks that they are doing you a favor. So yes, penalties can be very, very hefty for them.
I was going to say as well, and it's a slight off topic, but when we're talking about money and earning money, the taxation in different markets, and not just the gaming taxation, but the running a business taxation, is just getting more and more complicated as well. So, where depending on the size of the business, whether you have to pay local tax or not pay local tax, or whether the operator pays the local tax, or we've very recently employed a couple of new tax people because it is getting increasingly complicated to stay ahead of the law and make sure that you're not accidentally not paying the right taxes in the right places.
All right, so before I ask Bill about the latest updates from the US, I would like to ask you, Claire, about what are the latest and most hip territories that you would like to talk about for iGaming operators and maybe suppliers as well to venture in?
Sure. I'm not sure hip is a word ever associated with iGaming, but...
We did that.
Yeah. I wish I could say that Bill was going to give me some great news on a new US market opening up, but unfortunately, well, I won't steal the thunder, but I don't think it's this year. Let's put it that way. Now, I think it really depends on your appetite for what you're looking for. There's some really interesting stuff happening in Eastern Europe, in the CIS regions, but they tend to be fairly small markets, and they tend to be led by local operators who have a presence in those markets already. For
Plus
us,
corruption.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a whole different area. I think for us at the moment, there's interesting markets like the Netherlands, which are newly regulated in a way, and there's still a lot more to go out there. There's still a lot more operators to come online. So that's a very interesting and exciting market for us because it's the customers there know how to play. So a lot of these new markets that open up are very land-based potentially. Most of the customers have a certain set of way of playing, and it might not be our style. Outside of Europe, I think everyone is looking at LATAM and Africa. There's some very exciting stuff happening in Africa. We're currently looking at South Africa specifically, but a lot of Africa already has a significant amount of sports betting. And while there are areas that don't have affluent markets, there are also some markets in Africa that are significantly affluent and have a low age population that are heavily mobile based, that are desperate for, well, they're not desperate, but when we bring iGaming to them, when it's allowed, they will snap it up straight away.
Oh, okay.
It'll have to be a slightly different way of running your games because it's all mobile. The technology may not be as good. You might need smaller content that runs better on a phone. But definitely Africa, I reckon over the next couple of years, very large parts of Africa will open up properly in a regulated market for iGaming. LATAM is definitely coming. You know, Peru, if you look at Peru, Colombia, Mexico, they're already very strong markets. Brazil, we are hoping will regulate. Obviously, the sports betting hopefully will come. And the iGaming should come not long after. There's a piece in for that as well. And Brazil obviously it's the biggest market outside of the US that could potentially still open up.
And good luck finding a payment provider in Africa, right?
Yes, and the thing is, many times we see that operators, logically, you speak to your marketing person first, okay, which area to market, you spend a lot of marketing budget, and then you find out you don't have payment providers, or the ones that you find is very expensive. So what I usually advise to my clients, talk to your payment person first, see where your approval rate is good, where you find trusted and working payment providers, and launch your marketing budget there, not the other way around.
Yeah, and I think in Africa they do this SMS payments and stuff like that.
Exactly.
All right, so Bill, let us know what's new in the US.
A couple of things I want to share. We are approaching November 23rd of this year, our 10-year anniversary of launching iGaming in the first state in the nation, New Jersey. It's been a great 10 years, but what I'm a little bit shocked at, but I also blame us, not the legislators and the regulators, I blame us, is that we haven't seen a more proliferation of iGaming. But what we have seen is an explosion of online sports betting and sports betting. The industry is growing massively. We have 36 states, plus the District of Columbia, with retail and online sports betting. Not all of them have online. We know that none of those companies, most of whom come from Europe, none of them, are profitable. And I am still shocked when I hear from clients and colleagues from Europe who say to me, my God, Bill, why is it so hard to get online gaming done in America, and why is it such a slow slog? I don't blame the politicians or the regulators. I blame the industry as being an advocate for the industry. Because what tends to happen with great European brands that come into the United States, and I'm not saying we're special, but we are different, just like other markets are different. They oftentimes do three big mistakes. Oh, I must join the American Gaming Association.
That's the first thing.
Wait a second. They don't support online gaming. And they are neutral now. They used to be opposed to it. Why? Because Sheldon Adelson, the Sands Corporation, God rest his soul, died 3 years ago. The three biggest things to happen for online is Biden's election, Trump's defeat, and Sheldon's demise. Biden comes from Delaware, one of the early online boarding states. So what do European operators do? They join the American Gaming Association, $250,000 annual fee. Why are you doing that? Well, we need credibility. No, you don't. You don't need that kind of credibility. And I'm not saying don't be involved with the AGA, but they have not. You would think the AGA was responsible for American sports betting. They had nothing to do with it. They lobbied against it. And they're silent on online gaming. I just did a panel at iGaming Next with a member of the AGA. Bill, please don't talk about online gaming. I said, well, I won't talk to you about it, because I'm going to talk to everybody else in the room about it. So that's one thing. Two, what do? They hire some two-bit law firm that looks like a white shoe law firm, Chicago, LA, San Fran, New York, paying them crazy money to just twirl, and they have no experience with the online world, online gaming world. And then they're bitching like, why can't we move the dial? Isai Scheinberg, the founder of PokerStars, my second client in online gaming. I said to 11 years ago, Isai, you, Caesars, and another company you will remember, Victoria, First Data, we're spending $40 million a year in America lobbying Washington to bring online gaming to America. I said, Isai, you're the founder of Peer Software. You have one of the strongest brands that's recognized globally. What in God's name are you spending $40 million on? What did you accomplish? Well, Bill, what do you know about this? I said, my father, who has my name, he's Bill Pascrell Jr., William J. Pascrell Jr., is a member of Congress for 30 years. He's still there. God bless him at 86. He's the sponsor of your bill. He doesn't even know what online gaming is. He's your sponsor with a bunch of others. Great, you got some lobbyists to get sponsors. You haven't even gotten a committee hearing. $40 million a year? Multiple years, not just 1 year. I said, give me 10% of that and give me 2 years. And I tell you this, I can't allow success fees because you can't do that in lobbying and law. But I'll tell you what, pay me, and then if I'm successful, continue to pay me as your compliance person and monitor and all. We got it done. Why did we get it done? Because you don't lobby Washington on gaming. It's like lobbying Washington on automobile insurance. Washington has nothing to do with automobile insurance. It's relegated to the states. So we're now going to lobby Washington, D.C., our government, can't even run a one-car funeral, let alone regulate online gaming. And yet we're going to go down that road. So that's contextually where we're going to get to today. 36 states plus the District of Columbia, with sports betting, 6 states plus Nevada poker only. I just came back 2 weeks ago, was in Des Moines, Iowa. Not a very fun place to be in the winter. Talking to the governor and the legislature. I was sent there by Entain, BetMGM, and a few others to start to begin to advocate why this industry in America, okay, I respect the industry, why it spent $600 million US last year to get a ballot referendum on in California for sports betting to amend the California Constitution. It started out at 32% in the polling. They wanted to hire me in August of last year. Wait a second. You went from 32 to 27. You're going backwards.
Oh my
and
God.
you're spending money. You know what they got at the polls on election day last November? 18%. Well, the Indian gaming ballot referendum didn't pass. Yeah, they put it up so yours would fail. They don't need it to pass. Tribal gaming has 3 things that you don't have, industry. They have massive money.
Yeah.
They have massive votes and huge political capital. If I'm DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, you name it, what does the California voter care about those companies? Why? Because they're already on Bovado and Bulldog and Five Dimes and the rest of them. They don't care whether it's legal or not. But the industry has not educated in America the regulators and the legislators to understand that the only way to move forward in this industry for RG, for black market, and for good tax revenue is to regulate, legalize and regulate. And once the industry comes together collaboratively, instead of knocking on doors of politicians and saying, me, 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 it's all about me. No, it should be about the industry, providing protections and good compliance tools. So America has a long way to go. People thought in the beginning of the year Indiana was going to pop. And think about this. New York, now the 4th largest state in the nation. It used to be 2nd. It's going backwards. I called New York a year and a half ago when they passed sports betting. the socialist gaming empire capital of the world. When you tax something at 51%, which is a thin margin, you basically own the company.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, and now what's New York doing? 18 months later, because we came together as an industry to educate, there's no innovation in New York. Here's the innovation. FanDuel, DraftKings, PointsBet, Penn National, BetMGM, they're hiring huge black buses to take their customers over the bridge to New Jersey, where the tax rate is 13.5%, right? I mean, like, think about it. So now New York drops a bill, and we just started lobbying it a few weeks ago in Albany to reduce the tax rate, because they've learned the lesson. This is where we are in America, but I tell you one thing. I know these ladies are doing massive work globally. If you're looking to come to America, be careful when you plant your flag. Just be careful. It's not about hiring the big shoe law firms. It's not about joining some association, although they're valuable. It's about working with your colleagues to come together to say, look, we can compete once the market's legalized. But what in God's name are we competing for, knocking on doors before legalization?
That's right.
So I don't see a huge opportunity, Zoltan. I'm sorry to go on a bit. In terms of iGaming, maybe Iowa could pop this year. That's a maybe. I'd give it 40% chance. Indiana, New York dropped the bill. I think it's going to be a year before we see it happen, although there's some movement. But I think once New York pops, we can get a few others, the domino effect will come into place. And it's in the industry's own selfish interest to do it, because that's where profitability is.
Right, so there are many challenges of joining the US. And Claire, I want to ask you about, wow, Bill, that's a lot of information to process. So what are the challenges when you're entering a new market as a supplier, and maybe what are the challenges of the operators that are your partners when entering a new market, a newly regulated market?
I mean, I'll talk from a supplier perspective first. I think the first thing is to understand if that market's for you. Not much as every supplier would love to go into every market. It's very important to understand that you need to play in the right spaces. So the first thing is to work out who the customer is, who the player is, what they're playing. Will your content work, or will not even as just a content provider, regardless of what you're doing in that industry, are people going to buy your product? Because if they're not, it's really not worth even going any further. Once you've established that, then starts the hard work, because then you've got to start working out what are the regulations, what are the roadblocks? Do I need a license? Do I just need certification? Obviously, at that point, ties with a good regulatory body not regulatory body, but a good certification body is really helpful. If you've got someone who's already there certifying for that market, you can use their experience. There is a massive benefit to being a first mover. So if a newly regulated market opens up and that you think your content will work there or your product will work there, being there first does make a massive difference. You can see a lot of that in the US markets. The suppliers that got there first, some of them, sometimes it's because they're a land-based business, but in many cases, there are people who are now performing incredibly well in the US who just got there first. And the customers played their games first, and the customers stick with those games. So there is a first mover advantage. So if you think you're going to go into that market, speed is important. But also getting it right is important, because there's nothing worse than thinking you're ready to go live and then finding out you've missed something massive on the regulatory side and you have to pull back. And then it's really about who your partners are. Do you need someone local? Do you need someone in that business? So in LATAM, very much, the belief is you need someone on the ground. You need someone local. You need someone who is local, not just speaks the language, but is local to that area, because often the operators there are local businesses. Well, it's easy enough to go in Bet365 and with Entain. They will go there. We can go with them, but they probably won't be the whales in those markets. You need to understand who the locals are and how to work with the locals. And yeah, like I said, in LATAM, quite often that means having someone on the ground, which means investment. Do you need an office there? Do you just need a person there? And yeah, I've lost my train of thought a bit. But once you've established all those things, then it's the process of actually developing and certifying and getting live and doing all of that as quickly as you can. And there's a cost involved in that. So like I said, you can't do everything. I would love there to be a domino effect in the US, but if my absolute nightmare is that 7 states all open up in 1 year, because much as we would love to attack 7 states in 1 year, that's impossible for most organizations, especially if you need a data center in each state, which hopefully one day they'll do away with that law as well. But if you need a data center in every state and you need to get all your content certified in every state, and then there's high regulation that you need to work with, in most states in the US, you need to work both with GLI and with the regulator. So it's a ridiculously long processes. So it's about picking your battles, being there early, and getting it right first time.
All right, and you also have the to choose a payment provider, right? So how do you choose a trusted payment provider in the new market?
Yeah, obviously, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So I would advise your clients that yes, it's great, localization is very important, but who's your bank? Who's going to take my money? Who's going to store my money? How reliable they are. And just because they are a big name, it doesn't mean that they are trustworthy. We see that banks are collapsing on a daily. So we started with Wirecard that really shook the industry a couple of years ago. I remember those times when my phone never stopped ringing. And they were big. So don't keep all your eggs in one basket. Always see that who are the payment partner or definitely payment partners who can help you. Obviously, you need to satisfy all of them because everybody wants all your traffic and all your money to handle, but you have to make a decision. What are the portions that you give to them? What money you keep where? Who is doing your exchange? Who is doing your safekeeping of the funds? And obviously, how you are managing the risk versus the costs. And then you can make an informative decision that, okay, maybe it sounded like that market was really good, but after the calculation of the costs and the risks and everything, maybe we are not even touching that. I've seen many times that, as I said earlier, that the marketing budget was emptied on a exotic jurisdiction because they thought that that's great. I've got affiliates there. Let's do that, guys. And then because they couldn't find a payment provider or the payment provider disappeared with the funds, because unfortunately that's also happening, froze the funds, it really did not only a financial but a reputational damage to the operator as well. So that's also something to seriously consider. So all in one, that yes, you need to use your network because unfortunately in the high-risk industry, mainly when we are talking about exotic markets, a lot of things are not online. A lot of things people don't like to talk about. So many of us actually going to different events and talk to payment providers behind the booth to give me some solution. Give me Visa first-time deposits. Give me the best that you can, because many of the payment providers don't openly advertise a lot of solutions which might actually help you. So the other challenge is also everything is changing all the time. So when you're talking to me as of today, there's going to be a whole different advice, whole different payment providers, different banks as of in, I don't know, half a year later or even 1 year later. The companies change, the financial institutions change, their risk appetite changes, their prices always change. And you as a company, obviously, you change as well. So maybe half a year ago, no one really wanted you because your volume in a certain area was not satisfactory. Maybe you can actually retry, and now you get accepted by a payment provider. So there are a lot of different elements to it, but you will need someone who is handling your payments. And that person might not be your accountant. I'm an accountant. I know what are limitations of the accountant. So you will need someone who is advising you on this bumpy road, as well as you have your marketing team, sales team, affiliate team. You shall have a very strong payment team because that gives the strong, solid foundation to make good and informative decisions.
All right. So, Claire, I'm also going to ask you, because when we had this prep call, we were talking about how operators are not profitable, but suppliers are, of course, getting paid because they are the way getting paid, just like banks are getting paid if you're not profitable. So could you do maybe a comparison between the US and the EU in terms that how things look in terms of profitability for the operators maybe you're working with?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we have the benefit of working with most of the large European operators, and they are They are both profitable in Europe and not profitable in the US, so they are lucky enough that they can cover their costs that way. I do believe that the main reason the US isn't profitable, obviously you've covered a few of those things, but there is a process in America of having to educate the customer still. So, and it rightly or wrongly, the US sportsbooks have gone out there and gone, I will educate the customer by giving them loads of free cash.
Oh, yeah.
And sports betting margins are very small. So if you give a load of free cash to a sports betting customer, your chances are you're not going to make a profit. And obviously, huge TV campaigns and everything else that goes with that. Now in Europe, an awful lot of above-the-line advertising has been stopped now anyway. There aren't as many TV campaigns. There aren't as many sponsorship campaigns. People have already pulled back on sports betting, on bonusing. And because of all the anti-money laundering and the know your customer and the player protection, there's also a lot less drive to get people to spend and spend and spend. So there is less bonus cash out there. The benefit in Europe as well is that in virtually every market, I think France aside, if you have legalized sports betting, you have legalized casino.
Yeah.
And casinos have generally much higher margins, which means that customers have the opportunity to make money in both areas. They have the opportunity, and it's not easy, but they have the opportunity to transfer players from sports to casino, which is easily the best way of making money for a large operator. I come from, my original background was as an operator. And if you could move people from a lower spend, less regular spend product to a casino, whether that was bingo or sports betting, if you got them onto the casino side, you always knew that you'd extended that player's lifetime, and also you were going to get a longer term, better revenue out of them. Now that's something that the US can't replicate because in very few states there isn't that casino to be able to switch the customer over to. What I would say about the US, where it's different to Europe, is if you are regularly working with a European operator who is losing money, the chances are they will go out of business.
Yeah.
If you're regularly working with a US operator who's not making money, my belief is they're there for the long haul. They've got very deep pockets, and they will be sticking this out. I don't see DraftKings or BetMGM or Rush Street suddenly deciding that they're out of betting, they're out of gambling. So there is an assurity as a supplier to the US that regardless of the fact that they are losing millions of pounds, they will still be there and they will still pay their bills. In Europe, I think that's less assured. I think if you're working with an operator in Europe that is regularly losing millions of pounds, they are likely to stop paying their bills.
Yeah, but it's crazy. Like their marketing, like they're giving away $5,000 bonuses on,
The acquisition costs are ridiculous.
and not focusing on retention at all.
Well, that's going to be the shift.
Yeah.
When you're, look, DraftKings and FanDuel in particular, and BetMGM and the others as well, but them in particular have been, it's been a land grab. Massive money spent in a land grab, on top of $600 million in California for a failed error. I don't understand how those, let me see how to say this. Both of those companies paid me a massive amount of money to write a political opinion to them 3 years ago about California. And I said, whatever you do, and they both paid me. Spot on, good companies. I like Jason and Amy a lot. Whatever you do, you better sit down with the tribal gaming organizations. There's 60 federally recognized tribes in California. They didn't listen. They got the ballot referendum on. They started talking to Californian voters as help the homeless, vote for online sports betting. Yeah, okay, we're stupid.
Good campaign.
Here's a couple of vignettes, if I may, that I think is important. I don't get the chance to do this with a smart, robust, experienced European crowd. When are you going to look at buying a U.S. gaming company? Why is it always the U.S. companies looking to buy European gaming companies, a la MGM and Entain? I've been through that twice now. I'm on Entain's global foundation, as Zoltan knows, with Martin Lichka and former New York Giant Super Bowl champ Amani Toomer, to educate across the globe on RG, and we'll talk about that this afternoon. I've tried to stay away from that. I think it's time for Europeans to understand And I don't think you have a sort of obvious inferiority complex, but you should think about buying, looking, pursuing U.S. companies. Claire's right. Yeah, they have deep pockets, but they're not very smart when it comes to online gaming. I remember the first meeting I had with Borgata, Bwin, and talking about online gaming. I thought I was talking to a bunch of 2-year-olds. They would have been more sophisticated, actually. So we're still far behind the times. The other thing is that's really important, I think, to sort of moving into more profitability. Obviously, more states coming on and all. And you're right, Claire, we can't have a dozen states come on all at once. That'll be a challenge. Google this, because it'll take too long to talk about. But look at somebody who had a monopoly in America up until 6 weeks ago. Google it. GeoComply. They had a monopoly.
Yeah.
Not anymore. Look at it. Look at XPoint and that lawsuit. So that's one. Two, if I had a dime, a US 10-cent dime, for every black market operator who calls and says, Bill, I need to hire you, I need a license, you ain't gonna get a license. It's not gonna happen. But the problem is, and it's probably applicable here, I don't hear it as much, US law firms will take any business they can get for the most part. I can't because I have reputational value and my dad is still in public office, so he'd kick my butt if I did something overtly dodgy. But well, Bill, how do we get a license? Stop taking illegal bets, give a little cooling off period. I'm the guy who told Isai Scheinberg he had to sell his company in order for PokerStars to get a license. That's not an easy conversation to have in the Isle of Man. Not an easy conversation. He did okay, and Amaya did okay. And watch out for Isai Scheinberg because he's playing in the World Series of Poker in Vegas in a couple of months, and I think he's itching to come back. A final point, Claire and Victoria did it so eloquently in their spaces, but you will see around 2 o'clock, I think we have a panel on this. Compliance is important, player protection, consumer protection, but one of the things that America is starting to do is what happened in the UK, is what I call regulatory overreach. Think about this. Massachusetts banned credit cards. Now, credit cards aren't as big in Europe as they are in America. All that does is push people to the black market. That's all it does. You cannot bet on in-state colleges. Do you know how much massive betting there is on in-state colleges of Massachusetts? From Harvard to Boston College to Northeastern. I mean, there's a rich culture in betting. They'll just go to the local bookie on the street corner, or go to Bovado and Bulldog or 5 times. That's what they'll do. Exactly. That's what. But so the other thing that Massachusetts originally did, and we've got a little reprieve until April 14th, is the affiliate ban. We are going to ban affiliates.
Wow.
I mean, think about the stupidity of that. And then Congressman Tonka, thank God he's a Democrat, because his bill will have no chance for Speaker McCarthy or the Republican Congress to move it. He's got a bill in Congress to ban all sports betting advertising. And lawyers are like licking their chops. Oh, that's great. Constitutional fight. Never hire a litigator to do this type of work. Litigators are great and you need them, but this is not litigation. This is education and advocacy of the politicians, the electeds, the regulators, to educate them more. It is stupid to ban affiliates. It's silly to ban advertising in sports betting. All those verticals just drive people to the black market. Affiliates play a critical role in helping you differentiate as a punter, an unsophisticated American punter, where to go, to make sure you're going to a good payment processor that's licensed and a good operator. But I will say this, and Claire was very humble and modest about saying, suppliers are making money. They are making money. They have no risk. Affiliates are making pretty good money too. And the banks. When are the operators going to get their heads out of their behinds and start to understand that collaboration is important as we move forward in this industry? I think America still has the best days ahead of it, But I think we're going to have a challenge now because a lot of startups, and there are some in this room I've had conversations with, are having trouble getting access to capital now. And don't think for 1 minute that the US government didn't crack down on SVB and Signature Bank for a very important reason. They're nervous, they're not educated, and they're inexperienced when it comes to crypto, and they wanted to dial that back. That was the main driver for what happened there. And thankfully, we won't see a banking collapse. But what that has done to the capital markets, it's hurt innovation, and it's hurt startups coming in. The big boys and girls love that. I don't think that's good for the industry.
All right, so we did not touch base on Australia, and we don't have time for that. But I know that many of you already signed up. Bill is hosting a roundtable in the other room in the afternoon after 4 o'clock. So if you want to still sign up, or you can join him in there to ask more questions. I think you can also talk about Australia there.
I can, yes.
All right, all right.
There's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of overlap with it.
So if you have any closing remarks, so we can wrap this up.
If anyone
No.
has any questions, I think you can all find us after the panel, and we can reply to all.
So there aren't any questions. I would like to thank my panelists for their time and for their input on this. And we are going to take a break now. We have snacks and coffee outside, and we will be back afterwards.